Testing.
Good evening. Today is Monday, May 15th, 2023, and we'll call this meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We'll do school committee member introductions and we'll start with member Beauplan.
Thank you. Paul Beauplan, Ward 7 representative.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Jake Langley, superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like set aside? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Agenda item number 4 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personnel matters, or student issues should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Please approach the podium. Yes, please. There's a head and shoulders button. If you could just push that.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. My name is Nicholas Wharton. I'm an attorney in Auburn, Maine. A family has asked me to appear here before you today to read a statement. It'll be extremely brief. It indicates that I'm here today on behalf of a family who wishes to remain anonymous, but has called upon me to advocate that the school board needs to adopt policy reform with regard to the Lewiston public school system handling of incidents where a child student is identified as a victim. About a month ago, the school identified the daughter of this family as a victim of a threat of a shooting by 2 other students in her classroom. A school official contacted the family later that evening, where it was explained that the daughter's teacher heard part of that threat and sent one child to the principal's office. Due to a misunderstanding by administration over what had happened, the child was allowed to return to class later in the day. It was only after the school day ended and after administration received a more comprehensive report about the incident that additional action was taken. I identify this as the first system failure and would stress that the board should implement ways to ensure this doesn't happen again. We met with a school resource officer the following day, and this family was led to believe that they would be contacted by school administration with an update about when the offending juveniles would be returned to school. This never happened. About 2 weeks later, a family member called back to the school administration and was informed that due to confidentiality restrictions, little could be discussed other than a decision was reached that the offending child did not pose a, quote, credible threat and would be returning to school, but the exact date would not be given. The administration never told this family's daughter, who is again the alleged victim of this threat, that the offending child was being allowed to return to school. Identify this as the second system failure. Who determines what constitutes a credible threat, and why aren't the families of those student victims included in that decision-making process is the question this family wants answered. There is a Victim Bill of Rights in Maine, as you may know. I would strongly urge this board to review those rights and design policies that deal directly with notifying families of children who are determined to be victims of school transgressions. Parents and guardians of all parties involved should have a right to know what happened, what is being done, and why. I want to be clear that I am not here to suggest those involved in this case should face harsher punishment, leaving that decision to those responsible. I'm here to urge the board to institute reform that is consistent with today's climate, taking all threats, no matter how inconsequential, as a need for serious action, and look to prevent anything like what happened in this case from happening again. An acknowledgement by this board is not enough, and we respectfully submit that change needs to happen quickly. So that is their statement. I was unaware until I looked at the agenda this evening that in fact you all are voting on a policy, it appears this evening, with language that is actually stricken from that policy. And it's that language, I suspect, that we would advocate for. So I'll actually ask you to consider that this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Attorney Warden, if you have more information that you could share confidentially with the superintendent, would you be willing to do that? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5 is report from our student reps who are both busy with other activities this evening. 6 is to recognize Lewiston Public Schools staff and students. Superintendent Langlis will handle that.
Sorry, multitasking notes. I'd like to start with, well, who wants to come up? Should it be Tiffany to come up? Yeah, go on up. Some recognitions tonight, and Tiffany can help kick us off, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Actually, Montello was the recipient of the MCC Community Partner Award. It's a statewide award in which higher education institutions recognize different education institutions for different things. So we were the recipient of being a community partner with Bates. And this nomination was given by Ellen Alcorn, who's one of the members of the Harvard Center. Thank you. And so I want to give a little bit of a tidbit of sort of what her nomination was for. While Montello is the recipient of this award, there are a couple staff members that are here tonight that I want to recognize for doing a lot of the work that it takes to partner with Bates. So I'll talk a little bit about them, and there's a couple of staff members who are not here as well that I'll recognize. So a little bit of what Ellen said in her nomination. She shared that there are lots of ways in which Bates partners with Montello, but one of the ways is in our program called Book Buddies, and that's a program that was designed to increase the literacy skills of younger elementary children. Volunteers are trained to read to children one-on-one and then engage the students in discussion and retelling activities that are meant to boost an understanding of basic story language and architecture that are critical to literacy. So we have 25 or so Bates students who come every semester to Montello. They are trained by Montello staff, and the two women I have with me today, Ashley Shaw and Amanda Hammond, they've actually created this program and really helped develop it into what it is. They do the training for our book buddies. So they train all of our Bates students. They organize the space. They make sure we have the resources, and they support the students with all of the logistical pieces. They're creating the schedules. And without their efforts, this work really wouldn't be sustaining. It would really be hard for administrators to take on sort of that level of logistical planning and supporting of 25 Bates students. But they do that because they're passionate about it. They're passionate about literacy. As two of our reading recovery interventionists, they have a strong skill set and they know what kids need when they're reading books, and they're using that skill set to really go above and beyond to support our community and our community partnership with Bates. So they're here today, and I'll recognize those two. And additionally, we have Maheen Momosi, who isn't here tonight, tonight, but she has been teaching at Montello for decades now. But she has always offered her classroom as a place where Bates students can learn a little bit about education. She's a language learner teacher and has contributed in lots of positive ways to our school community. And we're really grateful for her opening up her doors every semester to Bates students. I also want to just acknowledge Chris Hoskins and his efforts. He's our MTSS supervisor and runs our after school and summer programming. And he's really partnered with Bates in lots of creative ways. So if there are students that are passionate about outdoors, then he finds a way to integrate that into our after school clubs. And so while he can't be here tonight either, I just want to make sure I give him a little shout out. But I'll have Amanda and Ashley really take the lead, and I'd love to publicly celebrate their efforts with all of the Bates work that they do every day. All right, you can come on up.
Thank you both for all of your work. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, School Board and Superintendent Langlis and Assistant Superintendent Paquette. My name is Jennifer Labonte, and I'm the Instructional Specialist for Math and Science, K-12 for the district. I'm really excited to be here tonight to show off some grant work for the CS for All grant that some sixth grade teachers, some tech integrationists, and some math coaches, and a few research scientists and I have been working on. I want to start things, I would like to bring up Amanda Dix. She's the research scientist from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. She travels around the state to work with different students and teachers on various projects. We're lucky to have her with us on this project. She also works with Aditi Wah, who is the research scientist from the Scheller Teacher Education Program, or the STEP program at MIT, who's also one of our partners. Aditi's not able to be here with us because it's a little bit too much travel for her, but she is a great resource and I hope she's watching from home. So I'll bring up Amanda to describe a little bit more about our project.
Yeah, well, thank you for that great introduction, Jen. I'm really, excited to be standing here in front of you to share a bit about this NSF-funded research project that we have been undertaking in collaboration with Lewiston Public Schools for about 1.5 years now. The goal of the project is to integrate computing within regular math and science instruction. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time because the real stars of this work are, of course, our teachers and our wonderful students who have joined us here tonight. So what we've prepared is really kind of the briefest demonstrations of some lessons that have been collaboratively designed between our administrators, tech integrators, teachers, to demonstrate some illustrative math content and standards. And so with that, I would love to invite up Miss Kimiri and Joyce and Gemma to demonstrate a constant speed activity using the Ozobot robots.
Hi, my name's Kiani Kamari. These are two of my sixth grade students who have been working this year connecting our math units with this coding in Ozobots. The first one we did as a class was to demonstrate constant speed. So we had the students trying to visualize that a faster moving object would go a further distance given the same amount of time compared to a slower moving object. So we're going to do a little demo.
Hello, my name is Gemma Saintville, and this is, what do I say? This is the first I put in the code for how fast the Ozobot needs to go. And then I make a timer for 10 seconds for 30 seconds. So my partner can make marks every 10 seconds.
Hello, my name is Joyce, and next I had measured for 10-second intervals for 3 different times, so that can equal 30 seconds. And next I had measured the distance or the speed of what Gemma had prepared.
Finally, my partner tries to guess what speed I had put the Ozobot on. Let's say I put 75 and she guesses 64, then I could tell her you're close, but maybe like a few more.
And every 10 seconds, we record how far the other bot has traveled. Calculating from those two measures. Of the other bot.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tim Smith with some students from McMahon who did our second demo for speed.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tim Smith, been teaching the school system 32 years. And this is Hakeem and Halim Muhammad. We just call them the Eames at school. The whole purpose of this is to get these kids excited about learning. And the cool thing about the Ozobots is an old teacher like me doesn't have a lot of training in it. So I rely on these guys and they're actually teaching me as well as where all the students are learning as well. It's one of those things when we're doing these things in class, the behaviors are down because they're actually doing stuff that they really enjoy and the coding is really, really neat. So I'll let you guys do the discussion about what we did. It's basically tortoise and the hare. One of them would be the tortoise, one would be the hare. They coded, I'll let you guys talk about it.
So me and Akeem here, we decided to do how long it would take for each of them to go to each other. So for my code, I did the hare going at 126 meters because I can't go the full 640 because it has a limit. And I just set it to stop for like 20 seconds when it gets there. And then after that, it goes for more all the way up. And Akeem's goes all the way up to the middle. And we see how long it took for each of them to get to each other. Yeah.
Anything you want to add there, Keith? You want to demonstrate it at all? You want to demonstrate it at all? Quick. Get up. He's coming. Basically, they're coding one of them to go really slow, like the tortoise, and the other one be the hare. They hesitate at first and then try to catch up. Closer. Normally it would be all measured out and. And then next, Ricky and Alex from Connors, and they're. We'll go next with dealing with the distributive property.
Hello, my name is Alexander Beliveau. I work over at Connors Elementary School across the way with Brittany Brystocker. We both teach sixth grade, and we're here with Olivia, one of Brittany's students, to demonstrate. We joined the group a little bit later, so we didn't get to do some of the other experiments they did, or I guess demonstrations with their kids. So our group focused on distributive property. So ways to show that when you make a shape, you can also cut it into two smaller shapes and you can add those up. So kind of using multiplication in addition to show different area of rectangles. Like a lot of other people have said, it was extremely high engagement for our students and something different to bring into the classroom after kind of doing a lot of the same stuff for a while and seeing some of the productive struggle that comes with coding, which was really cool. Like, oh, hey buddy, like I noticed you put this into yours. Let's redo that. Let's take away a piece. And some of that struggle can be challenging for some of our students. So I think once you put the robot in their hand and give them some technology, we found a much higher level of endurance, stamina, and just overall enjoyment in our classes. So we really got to the game late, but we're really hoping that we can stay in it for more next year. So we're going to demonstrate distributed property for you guys.
Okay. So she did create this, what the robot is gonna show, it starting going around, going back through. I don't think you'll be able to see here what the robot path will look like. Started like over 3 centimeters, down 6, back over 3, up 6, over 2, down 6. That's what you. We have that.
So I just wanted to take one last second to say why this partnership has really been so successful at LPS. And it's really because of the partnerships between like a tech integrationist and those sixth grade teachers, or the math coach and the sixth grade teachers, just to make the lesson plans that take illustrative math, which is the program that we use, and then fuse it with coding. And like they all said, the engagement has been phenomenal. We've had students who would maybe spend an hour doing math, basically not wanting us to ever leave with the robots. They want to just continue and troubleshoot and try again and try again and try again, and really have that productive struggle with math and with coding. And it's been so much fun for us to plan for, and obviously so much fun for the students to use the robots and get that understanding. So we just wanted to show that off. The program really doesn't cost the district anything because it's nationally funded. So we are going to try to continue this again next year with our sixth grade teachers that are willing to do so, and maybe rope in some fifth or some seventh and extend that grant. So, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Member Eames?
First of all, my name is Eames, so thank you, Eameses. And then also, being part of the math curriculum work that has been going on all year. Last week, we worked with the robots, these Ozobots, and it was so much fun. All the adults in the room were enjoying it, right, Paul?
You captured that very well, yes.
I just have a question. So do the kids start out with like a word problem and then they have to build their solution from that? Is that the steps? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yes, so I mean, these lessons are conceived as being either introductions to the illustrative math content that is, part of the regular curriculum, or it's to enhance a concept that they've already discovered. So in the demonstrations you saw tonight, there's prior math that needs to be done in order to successfully code your robot. And probably the most extensive was the distributive property that we just demonstrated. But yes, so they're given these kind of grounded real world word problems to then code their robot to solve. The idea being that you can either solve it computationally or you can solve it through coding. And hopefully they are working together, those two concepts, to enhance the learning even more.
That's really amazing. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to our district.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, love working with you guys.
I also have certificates for Jen and Tammy Thibodeau, because without them, this program doesn't work, but they would never ask for credit. So I would like to recognize them also.
Thank you.
Good job.
Agenda item number 7 is to receive a presentation on access for ELL's assessment results. And it looks like Lisa, yeah, there we go.
Liza's going to join us. And Liza, I have that handout that you shared with us. I'll put it up on the screen.
Perfect. Good evening. I'm here today to share a quick overview of the Access for ELL's results. Just as a reminder, the Access for ELL's is the required state assessment in the state of Maine for all multilingual learners who are identified. It measures their language proficiency. And once a student is identified as a multilingual learner, demonstrating proficiency on the Access for ELL's is the only way for them to exit. And so based on some feedback that we've received, we wanted to highlight some of the successes that we've found just in briefly looking at this data, and also let you know kind of what we're doing with this and what our next steps are. So there's a lot to celebrate, as you can see in that first chart there. In 2023, this year, we tested 1,253 students, and 79 students at Lewiston Public Schools demonstrated proficiency and are now former multilingual learners exiting the program, the ELL program or the multilingual learner program, which is really exciting for us. That number is up from 65 students demonstrating proficiency last year. And you can see our percentage based on the number of students tested is slightly up this year. Of course, we'd always like that number to be higher, but 79 students exiting and 6.3% of students exiting is a big success for us. And we really wanted to recognize that and celebrate that and share it all with you so that you could see the work that's happening. I also took this data and broke it down by grade level to give you an idea of when students are exiting. The blue bars represent 2022, so last year's exits, and the red bars represent this year's. And looking at them, most grade levels, we've seen a slight increase this year, which is exciting. You'll notice right around that 4th, 5th grade area, there's a pretty big spike. That's typical. Research would say that students typically develop language anywhere from 3 to 6 years. That's typically how long it takes for a student to become proficient. So if a student enrolls with us at kindergarten, right around that 5th and 6th grade level is where we often see a lot of students exit. We're really excited about the 5th grade students. That was a pretty big jump this year. And one piece we haven't gone too deeply into the data quite yet because it's pretty fresh. It's hot off the presses just a few weeks ago, but one piece that we want to investigate a little bit further is to see if our new curriculum is making an impact there. As the 5th grade students are now in their 2nd year of that new curriculum. And so we're curious to know if that has played an impact on that or if it's purely coincidental, but either way, it's really exciting. I will say middle school, when the assessment shifts into the grade 6, 7, and 8 testing band. A lot of districts report that they see dips in numbers, and our district is no different there. So that's an area that we really want to target, as well as high school. But we're really proud to show that we have students exiting across all grade levels and all schools as well. All schools are represented in these numbers here. The last chart that I have is a little bit more, has a little bit more to it that I'll need to explain to you. So the Maine Department of Education recently implemented the English Language Proficiency Indicator, which essentially is one of the pieces of data that Lewiston Public Schools is kind of reported out on. It tells us whether we're meeting targets or whether we're approaching targets or exceeding targets as far as how we're doing as a district. For a long time, it wasn't clear to a lot of folks, myself included, as to where those numbers came from. We would get the report that said, all right, this school meets and this school partially meets. And we never really had a full understanding as to how those numbers were created or how those labels were created. Last year, they shifted how they created those indicators. And this winter or this past fall, they put on a professional development for districts to attend. And myself and Steve Maroon, our continuous school improvement coordinator, attended. And he was actually able to replicate the formula that they used. And he was able to recreate it such that we can now predict what those proficiency indicators are going to look like for students. So it's much more difficult to explain than I have the ability to do so. But the short story is every student is given a growth target based on how many years they've been in the program, what their initial access score was and how many years it's expected for them to grow until they exit. And then from there, they're told they either meet that standard of either exiting or growth, they exceed it, or they don't meet it. So Steve recreated that for us, and we're actually using this data as part of our Department of Justice analysis so that we can really look individually rather than just at average numbers of scores. We can really look at individual students and see what their programming is, what's working, what's not, and go from there. So as you can see on this chart, the bar on the left side represents the 21-22 school year. The red indicates students who partially approach that target. We have kind of come up with this term ourselves. If they're partially approaching, it means that they're more than 10% away from meeting their target that the state indicated for them. The yellow is approaching that target, so they're within 10% of meeting, which is pretty close. The green is very, very small, and the reason for that is in order for a student to meet, they have to hit that number exactly. So that's why that looks really tiny there. It's hard to hit it exactly on the head, but the blue are students who either exited or exceeded their growth targets based on what the DOE determined. So looking at the chart on the right side, this shows the 22-23 school year. And as you can see, the number of students that exceeded those targets has increased, and the number of students who partially approaches has decreased pretty significantly. And so looking at this in a very broad sense, we're happy with what we're seeing. We're starting to see movement. Of course, we have a long way to go, and there's a lot of analysis of this data that's still left to come. But I wanted to present this in front of you to share some of the progress that we're starting to make and some of our goals for continuing to have this continue in years to come.
Thank you. Member Hurd.
Thank you. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
If that's okay. So the first one is the chart that you showed, the first chart that you showed us. Is that students, because it looks like the 0 is kindergarten, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So is that students who are new to our school and they've taken the test and they've tested out because they don't need it, but also students who have been in the program, but then are also testing out? So that's a combination of those two things, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So the number of students tested represent all of the students who took the Access for ELL. So they would have been identified, and this would be either their first time taking the test or, however many years they've been taking it. Yeah.
Okay. And then my second question is, do we offer our pre-K students any amount multilingual? Okay. And so they're not being shown on this chart.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Is there a way to also get that data as well?
So so the Access for ELLs is only for grades K through 12, but we do have a screener that we do in pre-K. It's called the PRELAS. It measures a more age-appropriate way of using oral language. We use that to identify students. And at this time, we do not require our pre-K multilingual teachers to re-administer in the spring, although we do have a benchmark option if they choose to do so.
I was just wondering if there's any like pre-K students that come in and they do the test and then they are decided that they don't need it. You know what I mean? So that is a number that potentially isn't reflected on here.
That's a really good point. These numbers do not reflect pre-K whatsoever, because the state doesn't have a required screening assessment or exiting assessment. That isn't included here, but the PRELAS would determine whether a student is eligible or not. So if they demonstrate proficiency on that initial screening, then they do not receive services. If they do, then they would continue to receive services, and their first opportunity to formally exit the program would be in kindergarten. You're welcome.
Member Whitlow, did you have your hand up?
So the second chart, it looks like we've had growth, but did you mention that the state changed the qualifications, I guess, or the formula? Did that, so it's hard to say, have we really have our students improved versus the formula is different?
So the 2 years that you're looking at have the same formula. Just last year, we were not entirely clear on how that was created. We were using it based on what the state provided to us. Unfortunately, we don't get that data until late fall, early winter, and we really want it now. So that's why we're able to look at this and this isn't the official numbers from the main DOE, but it is pretty accurate based on what Steve was able to recreate for us.
If a student is identified in, say, elementary school, and then they test, how many years can they test? I don't know how to word this. If somebody starts in like 4th grade in our district and is identified, and then they test every year, presumably.
Yeah.
And then they're a senior and they still haven't tested out, what interventions go on in between and what happens after they graduate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with us taking a deeper look into this data, we're trying to identify, we call them long-term English learners. So students who haven't identified, who haven't exited within those 5 years. We want to try to catch them before they hit that long-term status by looking at the programming. And now that we have the ability to analyze this data and the growth targets, we can then look at, okay, maybe the student was receiving an English language development service, and maybe they weren't making growth there. So are there other opportunities? Are there other types of services that we can put them in to hopefully see that growth? Students will test every single year until they exit. So unfortunately, we do at times have students who graduate with it, with still having their multilingual learner status. It has no impact on their ability to go to college, to get a job. It's just something that, we're required to continue to identify and provide service for until that either they graduate or they exit.
And is that something that's noted on a transcript for them going
No.
forward? What do you know if at the college level, do they continue to provide similar services or does it stop after high school graduation?
The way that we do it, it stops after graduation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liza.
Do any policies?
Agenda item number 8 is to receive and potentially vote on a field trip request to the LL Bean Adventure Camp in Freeport, Maine. So Andrea Sullivan.
I'm gonna be Andrea
Okay.
tonight. So this field trip request is exactly the same as the other LL Bean adventure adventure camp, sorry, field trips, except this is for the high school and there is no archery with this field trip, but it's 21st century summer program. They will go to LL Bean Adventure Camp, just like the other grade levels that you heard about. They'll have an opportunity to kayak. There will be the safety review and safety fitting of the life vests. There will be LL Bean staff in the water with the students.
Member Hurd.
I would like to make a motion to approve the field trip request to the LL Bean Adventure Camp.
I'll second that. Seconded by Member Bowden. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous minus Tanya. Okay. And agenda item number 9, to receive and potentially vote on the field trip request to the All-State Music Festival in Orono.
Cool. Hi, I'm Mal Brown. I'm the choral teacher at the high school, representing both myself and the instrumental teacher as well, who's at a PAB meeting tonight. But we put in the field trip request to take our students who have been accepted to the All-State Music Festival to that festival. This is an annual event that happens. The students audition in the fall. And they accept, the top students in the state for orchestra, band, and choir. We had 4 students get in this year. One is going to mock trial instead, so very talented student, and the other 3 are going to be going to the festival. We have 1 band student, 2 choir students going with us, and it's also a educator conference for music educators in the state. So we'll be at the educators portion of the conference during the daytimes while the students attend rehearsals with pretty high level conductors, really high quality experience for them to sing with just the other best performers in the state.
Is there any discussion or motion?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? It is unanimous.
Great, thank you very much.
Agenda item number 10 is to receive a grant update on security systems.
I think this one will be pretty quick, but as you know, we try to keep you posted with different grants we're applying for as things pop up. And we have a lot of irons in the fire, if you will, but we're still waiting for results. But one that came up is called the School Violence Prevention Program, the SVPP. And it, excuse me, it works through an organization, I believe the acronym is COPS. But we are applying for a grant. As you know, money got tight and hard to fund the upgrades of all the camera systems that we were working on. And even as we do that, we're finding older equipment is still phasing itself. And so we're applying for a grant to continue to upgrade that security system, even though it's still being upgraded as we speak. Just wanted to share that with you. And if we're able to get that grant, we will apply it to other deterrent related efforts. Deterrent measures, I believe they call it. Is that right, Bill?
Member Heard.
Thank you. Those deterrent methods, does that include like bulletproof glass for our front offices, like those types of things, or is it just security system related, like cameras and that kind of stuff?
So there's a whole slew of things that you can apply for. There's a pretty big pot of money, but it's nationwide money. So we didn't put in for those types of costs because of how exorbitant they are. But I think it's something we can consider if new monies come around again. That glass is substantially expensive. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it's very, very costly. Remember, Damon, you and I talked about this at one point in time. I think when they looked at, was it Longley?
Connors, I think.
Sorry, Connors, the Connors project.
Yeah, and it gets to be more than just a piece of glass. Because unless you completely bulletproof the entire wall and everything around it, including all the doors and everything, it doesn't do you really any good. The hurricane glass is a sort of a half measure, which is not completely bulletproof, but it certainly would be a deterrent. But actually trying to get to the point of saying the entrance is bulletproof is outrageously expensive, and it just requires a whole set of measures associated with it that when we looked at it for Connors, and I think we looked at it too for the high school when we put the new addition and entrance on. It just really hard to justify because it doesn't seem to be where it sounds like a great idea, but it doesn't always seem to be what really is going to deter somebody from coming into the building. They find a way to sneak in a different area. You can't bulletproof the building any more than you could, bulletproof every corridor, every door, it just would be, if you want to do that, it's a prison. And we don't really need to build that type of, at least in my opinion. Anyway, that was some of the decision making that went into it at the time.
Could any of that money be used for SRO positions?
Not the specific grant that this one is. We keep our eyes open. There was some legislation that was enacted and we just haven't seen the funds roll out yet. But this particular grant is not for personnel in that capacity. And for the glass thing, and I know you were just curious about it, I remember a conversation. It was just a conversation, but it was like a 3x3 square of glass for the main entrance. once you did the wall that it had to be mounted in and all of that stuff, it was like $10,000 for that one piece. And so it was hard to imagine doing all of the entry.
Any other questions? Yes, Member Damon?
Jake, can some of this be used so that we have better control of the position of the doors like at the high school, whether we know whether they're locked or closed or not, or can it be used for that type of upgrade?
Those kinds of deterrents are a possibility. So we'll see what we get for funds and around the camera systems piece, and remaining funds we can see if that happens. Again, this if we get the grant, but we're putting in for it.
You don't need a vote on anything.
Just one.
Okay, all right. Agenda item number 11 is to receive and potentially vote on the first reading of incorporating early release as an option for inclement weather.
So I want to make a note that further down in our agenda, there are a bunch of policies that we'll review, and one of the edits in that are cancellations for school. And there is a line in there that Karen's pointed out to me that includes potentially sending students home early for severe weather. I shared in the packet a number of things, but I'm going to pull some stuff up real quick. We did get survey results from families and staff, and I want to put that up so people can see it from home if they wish. And on this screen, I'm going to zoom here a little bit if it'll let me. We had over 1,200 responses. And of those 1,200, you can see the breakdown from parents, guardians, or staff. Much of the participation, 45% and 44% roughly, were either parents or staff. There is a student percentage here of 10.8%. And then there's some other feedback. And then from that second question, says I would support the return of early release snow days. We had a 94.7% vote in favor of that measure. And not to discount those who still had concerns, we also included the comments that were shared. And I think there are about 50 of them that we put in here. To briefly summarize, the comments were, I think, a lot of what you had said prior when we said we should get some more information was, what if there's no one at home? What if the weather is getting really bad? What if students have to walk? The real concerns I think that we all share. So those concerns are still out there in the community. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware of those. And then in addition to that, we have the other piece of this agenda item was language, excuse me, that we shared of what would the, like a first read policy wise, what would it include? And so I'm sharing that right now. So I had to switch screens.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. Are we going to be voting on whether to approve this, or are we voting on just the first read of the policy?
So I guess kind of both. So the hope with this, or at least the opportunity with this, is if you vote to approve this, this would be the first read to include it in the policy. So the policy below later in the agenda does have a line in it that says that early dismissal from school for severe weather as an option, but it doesn't provide this level of detail. And so I think we'd have to merge the two at some point if the committee wants to move with that. We did share out publicly that families would be notified the night before. Underline that in the document that we shared, because I think that the attempt there is to help alleviate some of the angst or stress around, well, kids might go home to a locked home, or they may not have somewhere to go, or there might not be someone home. The thinking here is if people know in advance that people can make arrangements. Also, there's some limitations on pre-K because of the bus runs and the schedule of the bus runs. You can't do it all. It would cancel after-school academic and club activities that have transportation tied to them. And then sports and potential events like a concert or something like that, we would do those as to be decided depending on what the weather actually does. And we would follow that early release schedule that we currently use, so people would be familiar with bus drop-off times and those things, so that we're not catching people off guard with the plan of getting kids home.
Can you tell, I didn't see the survey, I'm not sure why. The percentage of people that seem to be in favor of it is significant, and then a lot of these comments are against doing early release. How was it worded to prompt for the individual comments?
So the questions in the survey were what's your connection? Do you support the return of early release snow days? And then if the person said no, it prompted them to please share why they did not support the return of early release snow days.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you. Member Bowden?
I guess I would like to go ahead and make a motion then to approve the early release snow day first read. Did I say that correctly? It just seems, I mean, I would have voted in favor of this anyway, but it seems overwhelmingly that the city also agrees. So I will make the motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion before we vote? Member Eames?
I just want to put out there on the table that having been a solo parent with a full-time job, even the night before is still a huge struggle to figure out how to keep a kid safe. So I am wanting to just put some brakes on our enthusiasm, because even one kid who ends up in a snowbank, would be enough to make this a terrible decision. So I just want to put that out there.
Member Damon?
Jake, I guess from a operational perspective, I know it can be pretty challenging, particularly with the elementary kids, about who they go home to, just on an everyday basis. And if we're having to change, like drop off to, if this child supposed to always go off but ends up having to change to go to a grandparent, if that potentially changed them to a different bus, how will we manage that?
So we navigate those kinds of things now through our schools. We do have some of those situations where kids take a different bus. Sometimes it's just the afternoon, sometimes it's the early release days. So we have those things in place now, and students just move buses, and we have documentation that they do that. So if a parent had that need, that can be met. One thing that, and I know it doesn't cover every single base, but one thing I do like about this is using that 2-hour early release schedule that we have currently and that we maintain for our professional development. So when schools release early, parents know that schedule. Kids have found their ways home already for a couple of years under that model. But keeping that, I think, is critical. But there will be some of those anomalies of kids going with grandparent or neighbor's house or things like that.
Not to increase anyone's workload, but when the school paperwork packets go out at the start of the school year and it asks for emergency contacts and all of that, could we work between now and the start of the school year to have a form that says, if there is an early release date, this is the plan for my child, and so that we have those sort of on file, so that if there is some kind of if it's an early release day, they have to go on bus so-and-so to their grandmother's house, that at least we have that documented somewhere? If that's doable,
So
logistically.
Yes, all of our paperwork will be digital. So we'll have the ability to in real time as a parent, you'll be able to go in and make edits and adjustments and changes to health information, address information, bus information. And actually we're going to encourage people to do that, so that we have up-to-date information about busing at all times, so we can make adjustments. So we absolutely can do that, and it can also be changed as needed, and we would get a notification that a change had been made to a student's transportation or health information or
Like a
address or
same day
anything.
update, like if somebody changed it at 10 in the morning, it would be updated immediately and someone would be aware by like a noon release?
Yes.
Okay. Member Blunt?
Jake, could you survey any of the superintendents to see how their early release has gone?
Yeah, we ask the group when we meet, and actually don't know of any other schools that they don't have an early release for inclement weather. And it's something that they just have as an option. No one has shared any concerns. Some shared that they were surprised we didn't have that in place, where so many other districts use it on a regular basis.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Dr. Eames's concern. It's not really a slam dunk. Would our early release allow us to count that day as a full day and not have to have makeup?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Medina?
For parents that don't feel comfortable sending their kids to school that day, would it be excused? Would they be all set to do that?
Yes, we have that standing piece. If it's inclement weather, whether it's an early release or other things, we typically excuse students as long as they share that with us. And I'm holding my child home because of the weather.
I know you said everything's going digital, but there are some, students that are raised by their grandparents that maybe don't have, aren't technology savvy. So I was just wondering if something could get sent home, if they ask, and, just how would that work?
I think if people ask, we can provide things.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 6-2. Agenda item number 12 is to review and potentially vote on the first read of the following policies. Policies listed as A through G. Since this is the first read, I know we'll have an opportunity for a second read. Between now and the second read, if you could find out which policy the attorney was referencing, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He was referencing the first one, the weapons, violence and school safety.
Okay.
And the piece that he was referring to that has been stricken from the current policy is covered in other policies. It's covered in relations with law enforcement, and it's covered in our emergency emergency management plan.
Okay. So, and it wasn't, you don't think it was a part of student discipline? Because he mentioned like that one student didn't know about the other student, or
I'm guessing that it's A because it talks about notification and working with law enforcement.
Okay. Member Bowden?
He also brought up like a student's or a victim's bill of rights. Is that something that we have?
Yeah, I believe it's a state level thing. And I also want to say, I'm really hopeful that he will share more information, because I didn't get enough detail of what he shared to tie it to any particular incident or any situation that I'm aware of. And so I'm really hopeful he'll reach out with more information.
Okay.
As you know, we've had some disciplinary hearings for things, and those are confidential. Those are private matters. We cannot share the detail of those with parents who are wanting to know, even though sometimes I think we want to, but and sometimes students are expelled. They do what they have been asked to do by the committee. They go through a re-entry hearing, which is a pretty significant process, as you are all aware, and they're readmitted so that they could actually return to school. But that's not without a lot of process and a lot of work. Again, I just wish I had more detail, and I can also appreciate that detail wasn't provided, because I think there are also privacy rights in this setting. So I really am hopeful that I'll hear from him.
I know in like the adult world, if there's a victim and the perpetrator is being released from jail, that there's notification to the victim that so-and-so will be coming out of jail. I don't know if is there a way to do that and maintain appropriate confidentiality at a school level? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we can explore it.
Member Bowden?
I'm sorry, this might not be the appropriate time to do this, but I just want to ask, since we're on the topic, Is there a way that I could add an executive session on to the end of this meeting? Would I have to suspend the rules to add an executive session on? Like, how would that work?
Would have to be a suspension of the rules to add an emergency executive session.
Without a vote, so it wouldn't affect like the public's.
Correct. It would not be an executive session that requires a vote.
Yeah, you could suspend the rules, that would get voted on, and then you could add an executive session and that would be voted on.
And
But then there would be no vote on whatever is discussed in executive session.
would this be an appropriate time for that, Madam Chair, or should I wait until the end?
Wait, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Were you done with your question about the policies? Did someone want to make a motion on the first read of these policies? Member Hurd?
Thank you. So not a motion yet. But I also think we need to do some work. And I know this kind of doesn't fall on us. It's at a state level, but my concern is with our elementary students and the way that that is being handled, because as we all know, there are some situations that our current students or staff or parents are not comfortable with their students returning to school or whatnot, with some situations that have happened. So I don't know how we address that, because we have a duty to not only the student that is potentially harming other students, but also the rest of the district and our staff.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the current standing expectation that you cannot expel a student from 5th grade below. And your maximum consequence for a suspension is 3 days, regardless of the offense. And so I know this committee knows.
Spell them under that for the gun.
Possession of a firearm. And it's possession on school grounds. And so that can be a challenge. Sometimes I think we at times have students that we're looking to take different measures, and there's some other avenues for kids, but it's a series of qualifiers that make it a challenge, I think, not only for this committee, but others in the state. There has been conversation at the state level from the executive team for superintendents and also some legal resources to, I think the word they used was a crosswalk, in which if you had certain things going on that you could take other steps, even though some language is in place. The problem is it's legislation, it's law. And so it's going to have to go through the process of legislation to be considered. To date, I don't know of one that's going to pull that away. But we've certainly had some challenges around that. And I know other districts have too.
Member Bowden?
So just to be clear, especially with policy NEP and SBA, the suspension of students, this is state law, the way that it's worded, and we cannot change anything about this. This is not policy committee coming up with this. This is the state law. The suspension of students, like that.
I'd have to look at them side by side, but my historical recollection of that was that there may be one difference. I think our language was, is it grade 6 and above, or?
Yeah.
So that is aligned to state law. So really, in my head, I go 5th grade down. You cannot expel.
So I just want to say publicly, it makes me extremely uncomfortable. Obviously we're privy to things that we can't share, but there have been things that just really terrify me. And this just doesn't seem reasonable to me. So I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm uncomfortable after hearing that attorney speak about victims' rights. And I don't know that I'm comfortable passing these right now.
Member Whitlow?
Thank you. Policy JICC student conduct on school buses. Could you tell me did you collaborate with Hudson on this?
We did.
And this was the most feedback that they could give us for what they would like change, because I don't feel like there's a lot that's changed here that will help our buses stay safe.
So this is just the policy around student conduct. There's a whole nother procedure that we're actually currently working on that actually we're meeting with our administrative team tomorrow, and with Hudson and our transportation department to review and go over. That's actually JICC-R, and it's not in your packet tonight because I wasn't bringing it to you until we had those conversations. It's actually a procedure that doesn't belong in our policy manual. It's really about it's about handbooks and rules and on buses, but it did need some work, and there's a lot more red on the procedure than there is on this particular, just the policy.
Member Whitlow.
So on the second paragraph of that is in red, once the student boards the bus and only at that time. And then I think it says, do they become, so it's asking a question. I think, is that correct?
And only at the time do they become, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like another sentence, like, and only at that time do they become the responsibility of
Only
the
what's there in there.
towards the bus and only at the time do they, okay, I guess I'm reading it as a question, but that's not how it's supposed to be, okay. All right, so it's correct, I guess.
I just want to clarify, since it's been brought up and it's not directly one of the ones that we're reviewing, but, and I can't find it for some reason, but students in grade 5 and below can be expelled if they've brought a gun to school, or there's other language, isn't there, that says if they've made a threat to harm themselves or others. I thought there was additional language that said something about if there was a threat, that it could then in specific situations.
That additional language does not apply for expulsions or suspensions longer than 3 days, including bodily harm.
So the most, if a student in grade 5 or below says, I'm going to come to school and shoot everybody, the most that they can get is a 3-day suspension.
Yes.
Okay,
by
thank you.
law.
All right. Member Heard.
Thank you. By law, in that law, it states possession of a weapon, right? It's not a possession of a gun, not possession of a weapon. Do you know?
It's firearm specific.
Which is concerning because we obviously know that multiple things that you find in a classroom could potentially be used as a weapon and have inflicted injuries.
Yeah, I'm one of the louder voices at our superintendent meetings when we talk about this law. Really hopeful that it'll get changed.
Do we have a motion for the first reading of these policies?
As chair of the policy committee, I will propose approving the first reading of policies A through G. Usually I don't do it because I'm chair of the policy committee, but since no one else did, I did today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? 5, 6, unopposed, 6-2. Agenda item number 13, to review and potentially vote on the deletion of the following policies listed as A through F on the agenda.
So most of these policies are either, let me just go back to my notes here. I tried to put them in order, but so ED materials management, it's not, the feedback we received from our audit is this is something that's the responsibility of the superintendent. It's part of the superintendent's responsibility and it's not necessarily to have in the policy manual. EE transportation services management. Again, not necessary to have in our policy manual. It's covered in other policies talking about the legal and safety requirements for vehicles and such. The vocational instructor salaries, that is something that's covered in our CBA. The teacher responsibilities for substitutes, this is an administrative procedure, and again, it's something that would be in a staff handbook. Professional staff development opportunities, administrative procedure, again, not necessarily needed in our policy manual, something that we would have as a procedure or a process within our district. And then the computer home use procedure, yet again, something that it would be in a student handbook, but not necessary in our policy manual.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item 13, policy A through F.
Is there a second? Member Bowden,
Yeah, second.
any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Agenda item number 14 is a report from school committee chair. The things that I had to report on are also community announcements, so I'm not sure, I'll just do them now. Maine Inside Out has several events coming up. They have one tonight that we're missing because we're here. This Thursday, they have another event at Lewiston Middle School. Whoops, I just cleared it out. I believe it's at 5 p.m. at Lewiston Middle School. Let me open that up again. Yes, 5 to 6:30 p.m. Some dreams come true, some dreams become nightmares. It's a collaboration between Lewiston Middle School students and Maine Inside Out. The Lewiston Youth Advisory Committee is also seeking members for next school year. Anyone entering grades 9 through 12 can apply on the City of Lewiston website. And the Lewiston Rec Program is looking to hire lifeguards for the summer for Kennedy Park Pool. Anyone ages 14 and up can apply. They are giving lifeguard certification training absolutely free to anyone who applies. And the pay is $16 to $18 an hour, which is pretty good for 14 years old and up. And that's all I have for tonight. Agenda item number 15 is report from the superintendent.
I've just got a few things. First is teacher appreciation was last week. We had a lot of really good things go on at schools, and we were able to get coffee mugs for staff, which were appreciated, I believe. But just one more shout out for teachers, actually all of our staff as educators and those who help education happen. It's a really good week. There's some fun stuff that went on. Also, on a more somber note, we'll be sharing out a letter for Lisa Chassie and her family. Lisa was a instructor at the middle school for years, built a fantastic relationship with a number of students and staff. And we'll be sharing out a letter because she became very sick with cancer. She had left us. She wasn't a current staff, but she has a special place in all of our hearts. And so we'll be sharing a letter about that, just so you know. But she was a good one. She brightened a lot of kids' days when they weren't having such a great day. Also, we'll be sharing start and stop times. It's something that we've talked about a great deal, moving that schedule back. And so we're shifting again back to what we had before. There was some schedule shifts around transportation and other challenges. So just so you have a heads up on those things coming up.
Number 16 is a report from our city council rep who is absent tonight because she's attending a city council meeting. Agenda item number 17 is update from school committee subcommittees. Member Beauplan.
Thank you. Dr. Eames mentioned earlier that we both were in attendance for the Lewiston math curriculum meeting last Monday, 8 to 2 at Dingley. It was led by Jen, who addressed us earlier, who did a very wonderful job. Good people in that department. Healthy discussion, usual lack of consensus that, you know, people had to give and take and share, and just felt really good about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Damon.
Yeah, facilities, we're working on a bunch of stuff. We've got a couple of major projects that we're looking at. We haven't committed to anything yet. As far as negotiations, we have 2 ongoing negotiations, the tech group and the general government group, which is our secretaries and janitors and maintenance workers and whatnot. So far, both of those are going along quite well, and we're close to agreement on both of those contracts. So, which would really close things up before the end of the school year, before the existing contracts expire. That's the goal. We're close.
Any other committees?
Go ahead.
No. All right. Agenda item number 18, school committee community announcements. Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I did see Jake posted today that pre-K and kindergarten registration is opened. When I click on the link though, I can't find the registration on the public schools website. So I don't know if that's just me and like operator error or.
Were you able to see the link at the bottom? It didn't take you there?
It takes you to the Lewiston Public Schools page, but then there's no, I don't see like the quick link. Usually there's a quick link on the side for the registration. So that was the only thing. And then also to clarification question, in-district transfer is also available to apply also. But I wanted to know, is it just pre-K and kindergarten, or do you have to continue to do it once? My understanding it was just pre-K and kindergarten, and then you don't have to do it going forward, but.
So we ask families to do it every year. We do have other challenges though that include like enrollment placements. So for example, if you register and your district is Montello, for example, let's say their grade 2 is just totally full, we might send that family to another school in that particular case. So we ask families to do it every year, but some families who get placed at a school may not have the knowledge that they're at a school that is out of their district. And so we try to vet those on our level instead of forcing people or creating a panic that they might have to move. But the enrollment numbers, especially with our budgets being reduced as they have been, there's a lot less play, if you will, with, yeah, just let them go there because of this or that. So we try to be mindful of the family's need and making sure we meet what we can, but the classroom sizes are going to be a much bigger factor now than they used to be.
So I just have a follow-up question. So let's just say a student is there pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, like you want them to keep doing it for every single grade. So there is a potential that if they've gone there from like pre-K to third, that they could not go there, like again, if numbers are wonky.
That may happen. Yep.
That's how I ended up on the school committee, because my child had been approved for up until 5th grade and then denied, and it turned into a thing. And here I am 7.5 years later.
I also want to add that this is not popular with some families, but I'm giving out of district requests more scrutiny than I used to, because our enrollments are what they are, which contribute to our subsidy. And more families seem to be choosing a different location for their children to go to school. Superintendents in general, we've had this conversation that I believe everyone statewide will be denying more and more requests to go out of district because of how tight people's budgets are. And I'm a firm believer in what we do here. And some kids may have a need to go elsewhere, but if we can't find an educational need for someone to go elsewhere, it may be denied. And just so you know, you may find an email in your inbox one day of someone saying, I was denied, and that can't happen. And there is an appeal process through the state. We've worked with them before on those. So if people are asking you, let them know there's an appeal process.
And just for clarification, if it's out of district, it has to be approved by both superintendents.
That's correct. Yes. And when I say out of district, I don't mean within schools. I mean, if you live here, but you want to send your kid to somewhere else, that requires a superintendent's agreement by both districts.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce and kind of like a reminder for the school committee that the top 10 luncheon is tomorrow at the Green Ladle. I'm really excited for that. I absolutely love going to those every year. So.
The only other thing I have, I know we had the conversation before the meeting, but just for the public's sake, there was a constituent who had reached out to Linda and a few other members regarding the Farwell playground being locked in the evenings. And I didn't know if you'd be willing to give an update on that publicly.
Yes, so the gates have been locked during the day because of a more complex student situation. However, they are supposed to be unlocked at the end of the day. And so I reached out to the principal when I heard that had been brought up. It's something we looked at a couple of weeks ago. So we'll just make sure that custodians are getting out there to unlock, because they should not be locked. If they are, please reach out to me directly or the committee, and we will stay on top of that. They should not be locked. We're not intending to have it locked after school or on weekends.
Thank you. Agenda item number 19, future agenda items.
Well, this isn't a future agenda item, but at this point, I would like to suspend the rules, vote to suspend the rules to enter into an emergency executive session. That does not require a vote.
I think you have to suspend the rules first, and then we vote on that. And then after the rules are suspended, then you have to make the motion to add an executive session.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 7-1. Member Bowden?
And I would like to enter into an emergency executive session.
Make a motion. to
Make
add
a
an
motion
emergency
to
executive-
add an executive session onto the agenda, please.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Opposed? 7-1. Are there any future agenda items? Any member Beauplan?
Thank you. I'd like to re-examine the Lewiston School Committee policy of not expelling elementary students.
That's not our policy, it's state policy.
We voted to approve it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we were just voting to approve the same policy at the state level. It was an act. It was an unnecessary step, basically. The policy that we put in place then is the same wording as the state policy. So we can't change our policy contrary to state policy. I think we could have a conversation, we could have a public conversation though regarding that and maybe direct like our local our local representatives to bring something to the state, or if you wanted to add that as a future agenda item, we could do something like that.
I do think too, I just want to make sure that ours does specifically match the law, so I think it's worth a review.
Member Eames?
I have a vague memory of watching this during COVID with bad microphones from my home on YouTube, but I thought that what you guys did then was vote for elementary school, which in Lewiston includes 6th grade. So I think that may be the only difference between state law and what you voted on then. But now we've got it in front of us to revisit, so we will be talking about it.
Yeah, and reading the language on here, there's parts that I have questions about, so I think it would be good to have a conversation about that. Member Bowden?
Thank you. I guess I would like to look into what this Victims' Bill of Right is and how that could correlate into policy in Lewiston Public Schools for a future agenda item, please.
Anyone else? All right.
So I was taking notes. I'm also curious, the application of Victims' Bill of Rights, and does it apply to something like different scenarios that we've faced, to make sure we have a full understanding of that?
Is there a motion to go into executive session? Moved by member Hurd, seconded by member Bowden. All in favor? And opposed?